Two Journeys Ministry with Pastor Andy Davis. Biblical teaching to guide you to spiritual maturity.
All right, we continue to make our way through this amazing book of Ezekiel. We come to Ezekiel 4 and 5. We're not going to be able to do both of these chapters tonight. Ezekiel 4 and 5 really should be taken together, but the way we've been studying this, it seemed like Ezekiel 4 was enough for tonight. So I would love it if two people would be willing to read our text tonight, Ezekiel 4, 1 through 8, and then someone else 9 to 17, and then we'll walk through it.
Now, son of man, take a clay tablet, put it in front of you, and draw the city of Jerusalem on it. Then lay siege to it. Erect siege works against it. Build a ramp up to it. Put up camps against it, and put battering rams against it. Then take an iron pan. Place it as an iron wall between you and the city. Turn your face toward it. It will be under siege, and you shall besiege it. This will be a sign to the house of Israel. Then lie on your left side and put the sin of the house of Israel upon yourself. You are to bear their sin for the number of days you lie on your side. I have assigned you the same number of days as the years of their sin. So for 390 days you will bear the sin of the house of Israel. After you have finished this, lie down again, this time on your right side, and bear the sin of the house of Judah. I have assigned you 40 days, a day for each year. Turn your face toward the siege of Jerusalem, and with bared arm prophesy against her. I will tie you up with ropes so that you cannot turn from one side to the other until you have finished the days of your siege.
Thank you. Someone else 9 to 17.
Take wheat and barley, beans and lentils, millet and spelt, put them in a storage jar, and use them to make bread for yourself. You are to eat it during the 390 days you lie on your side. Weigh out 20 shekels of food to each day, and eat it at set times. Also measure out a sixth of a hin of water and drink it at set times. Eat the food as you would a barley cake. Bake it in the sight of people using human excrement for fuel. The Lord said, in this way the people of Israel will eat defiled food among the nations where I will drive them. Then I said, not so, sovereign Lord. I have never defiled myself. From my youth until now, I've never eaten anything found dead or torn by wild animals. No unclean meat has ever entered my mouth. Very well, he said. I will let you bake your bread over cow manure instead of human excrement. He then said to me, Son of man, I will cut off the supply of food in Jerusalem. The people will eat ration food in anxiety and drink ration water in despair, for food and water will be scarce. They will be appalled at the sight of each other and will waste away because of their sin.
All right. It's overwhelming. Just by way of context, as we've already stated a number of times, but just by way of review, Ezekiel was a prophet during the process of exile to Babylon. I say process because it came in stages, stage upon stage. So when he began his prophetic ministry, the Jews still retained sovereign control over their nation and over Jerusalem, but danger was coming, and the Babylonians had already begun to deport individuals and to extend their rule to that region, but the bad things are yet to come, and we can see that being prophesied here. So just where we're at in the book of Ezekiel, we've already had an overwhelming vision that God gave to Ezekiel of cherubim, a vision that, as we've mentioned before, seems to defy any description. They are overwhelmingly powerful, glorious beings with energy and strength and a form that again defies description. And they move, and as they move, it's bright light and fire and all of these things. And then above them, as we've noted, was an expanse sparkling like crystal, like ice, and high above that was the throne, and someone seated on it was an individual who looked as if he were on fire. And this was a vision of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. And he said, when I saw it, I fell face down. And so then God called Ezekiel to a prophetic ministry. He was a priest, and he was transported in some amazing way to the exiles who are living in Babylonia by the Kibar River, a little muddy canal. These are individuals that have already been exiled, so they've lost their place in their homeland. And he will prophesy to those in exile, but they're still Jews and a king and all that who are living back in Jerusalem. And so this is a prediction to those exiles, as we have heard. So, what is the main idea of this chapter, Ezekiel chapter 4?
Israel's going to be under siege.
Okay, what does that mean?
Well, it seems like a military action. Siege works against it, a ramp up to it, camps against it, battering rams.
Okay, yeah, it's pure military. So the city of Jerusalem is going to be besieged.
Punishment.
It's punishment. How do you get that? Where do you see? I agree with you. Where do you see punishment?
But as far as the way he's very descriptive on how to lay, what to eat, each side to side. Just those little things I'm seeing, the rational,
Yeah,
it's a form of limitation and punishment.
yeah,
Maybe not a form of limitation, but that's,
yeah.
I gather.
Yeah, what's happening to them? And this will be much clearer in chapter 5. I said that these two chapters should go together, but there's no doubt at all that this siege that's coming in Jerusalem is coming as a direct result of the wickedness and the sinfulness of the Jewish people. He's going to make that plain. So you're a little bit hindered in the fact that you don't have, I mean, the story would continue that if we read it, but we just don't have all of it in front of us. But yeah, there's no doubt. The siege is coming because of the sins of the people. What does this passage teach you about the role of a prophet? And it reminded me of this verse in Hebrews 1:1 and 2. In the past, God spoke to our forefathers through the prophets at many times and in various ways. If this isn't a display of that, I don't know what is. All right, so what does that phrase mean to you? At many times and in various ways, God spoke through the prophets. Realize the author of Hebrews is writing centuries after Ezekiel.
There were many prophets, and some had lots of stories of incredible miracles, and some had, married a prostitute, and they just had all kinds of different adventures.
Okay. Now, one thing you don't know, but it becomes, well, maybe you do, but it becomes clearer as this book unfolds, is that Ezekiel carries out these ministries for the most part without saying anything at all. Like literally no words. He doesn't say anything except from time to time specifically what God tells him to say. So the things that are happening here are really just acted out. So if you had been in exile, you would have gone by the prophet's house, and this dude has made this big clay thing and has drawn something on it. You're watching him draw it. We don't know how long this would have taken, but after a while you start to recognize, well, wait, that's Jerusalem drawn on that tablet of clay. I wonder why is he doing that? And then this thing just keeps unfolding, and it's being acted out. And he's going to do other things, as we'll see, God willing, as we go on in our study. But he's doing stuff that's like literally physically acted out. So what does this teach you about the life and the ministry of a prophet?
Yeah, there's work cut out for him. I mean, I'm just being quite frank.
It's very
descriptive and how, this, that. Oof.
Yeah. I mean, physically, what is this going to entail for him, for Ezekiel?
disciplined obedience.
Okay. Like, what would you say would be the hardest thing for him to do here?
Lay on his side for 13 minutes.
Lay on his side for 390 days. On one side only. Now, I was reading one commentator, and he thought this was just his daytime job. He went home to his wife at night and ate dinner with her, and then the next day came and did it again, which I think probably is true. Because you could well imagine how brutal it would be to literally do this 24/7 for 390 days. It might even be fatal. I don't know. What else does God want him to do? Not just lay on one side for 390 days.
I'm not sure what this means, but he said to to bear their sin for the number of days that he lays on their side.
Right. There's some kind of symbolic sin bearing. We don't know what that means, but I don't think he's being tortured or tormented. But he is definitely representing the nation of Israel as he lays on his side, bearing their sin. So he's representing sinful Israel in that sense. Okay, what else?
And part of the time he's baking bread, so he's not laying there the whole time.
Okay, so he has other activities to do. I think that's why you just put it all together and you come to the conclusion this is not a 24/7 job, which is, merciful of God. But also, what's he eating?
Ezekiel bread.
Ezekiel bread. Yeah, this is not generally that which you make bread out of. I mean, you look at two of these. I think you could see would be a grain that you could grind, but two of them are like vegetables. So this is a very unusual mixture of foods. Why do you think the Lord had him do this specific mixture of foods? What does it represent? Wheat, barley, beans, lentils, millet, and spelt.
They ate in Egypt?
Well, I don't know what they ate in Egypt. I'm thinking they ate better than this. I mean, this is food during what kind of circumstance?
Bad times.
Famine. So this is representing famine food. All right, and so you have what's being eaten, and then you have the amount, which is 20 shekels. And as we'll walk through the study, that's about 8 ounces of food every day. 8 ounces. And the water is about a pint of water. So in a hot climate, that's not enough. And so he's eating just this terrible food, little tiny amounts at set times, it says. So probably a little at a time, trying to make it last. And then drinking like a couple of sips of water, and then 2 hours later, a couple of more sips. This is it. But this is what God asked him to do physically, to act out.
Did the people know that he was claiming to be a prophet? Like, he's mute too, right? Up until at least a good portion of this.
Yeah, the muteness is.
The
The muteness is, it comes and goes. So there's stretches of time in which he literally doesn't say anything. Other times, the only thing he says is the word of the Lord. Thus says the word of the Lord. So he's not just chatting with them and saying, boy, this is something, isn't it? Boy, that took me a long time to. He's not doing any of that. He's just saying what the Lord told him to say, and he's acting this stuff out. So you get a sense that there's an audience of people that are coming to see this, and they're probably some of them did. But he's quite a show. Keep in mind, they didn't have electronic entertainment back then. There's nothing else to do. So as you're going out to the field there by the Kibar River or whatever it is you're doing, let's go swing by the prophet's house and see what's developing.
Baking bread on the cow.
What's happening next, But fundamentally, we've got a lot of things going on. But the first thing that they're going to see before he gets into the eating is, as Zach said, you're going to see the replica of a siege. And so what is being predicted or prophesied here is the besieging and ultimately the fall of Jerusalem. Now, how would that have hit them? How would that have hit these exiles?
I'm not positive, but if you're in exile, there's at least the comfort that you take from Jerusalem being secure. And
Sure. Do you think they would have seen it as secure? Pretty much no way that this is going to fall. I would think so. All right. First of all, it's very difficult to conquer. All right. Remember that the Jebusites who had it before David conquered it were very confident that no one could get in there. He said, the Jebusites said it would just take lame and blind men to defend it. And so David picks up on this and said, well, let me get a bunch of lame men blind. Let's see what we can do. And he ends up taking it. But it has steep ravines all around. It's hard to build these kind of siege ramps. It's difficult to get to. It's just a very, very tough nut to crack. I mean, it's a very, very difficult city to conquer. But not only that, What was it to the Jews? Well, this is the place where the glory of God had miraculously chosen to dwell, in the temple. So they really truly believed that God would defend the temple. They would have been shocked that Jerusalem would fall and then be destroyed. Even though they are in exile, they've still got probably relatives and friends back in the home country. And there's always that hope they can go back. But once the place is leveled and destroyed, it's devastating, as we see in the book of Nehemiah, where the walls are rubble, the city's rubble. It's just very depressing, and there's like no future. So this would have been shocking. And again, this hasn't happened yet. This is a prophecy. This is a prediction. Hasn't happened yet. So why would God do that? Why would God want these exiles to see this acted out prophecy?
Improve their behavior, maybe.
Okay, call on them to repent. This is going to be a theme in Ezekiel, also in Jeremiah. If at any time I warn a people of impending disaster, and if they change their ways, I will change my mind. Basically, God says that, both in Jeremiah 18 and Ezekiel 18, which is interesting for me. I've been trying to figure out how that works. But it's the Bible frequently uses anthropomorphic language and effectively is saying prophetic warnings are given as an act of grace. They are effective. So if you heed the warning and change, I'm not going to bring the judgment on you. So that's good to know, isn't it? So this is an act of kindness by God, trying to get them to change, I think, their behavior.
But you would think it would be more appropriate in Jerusalem. I mean, that's the befuddling part of it.
Not really, because there is a man on the job there named Jeremiah, and he's telling them the same thing.
This is probably a dumb question, but what's described here is so theatrical. There's no analog, though, for theater in this way for them. Would there be? I mean, it's such a strange way to communicate.
It is. Why would God do that? Why would God want a prophet to act in such a strange way so that some people think he's crazy?
Heidi, he can do what he wants.
That's true. That's true. Well, in general, if you think about the prophets, you think about Elijah, right? Or Elisha, or Jeremiah, or any of these guys. How would you characterize them just as people? I mean, what are they generally like?
Fiery. Kind of
fiery,
sober.
Okay. Would you at least, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, would you call them a bit odd? I mean, they did strange. I mean, Elijah was dressed like John the Baptist, and John the Baptist dressed like Elijah. That's odd. Camel's hair, leather belt, locusts, wild honey, all that stuff. They lived different kinds of lives. Jeremiah was a normal individual, but he had a very abnormal message. Very, very difficult to listen to. Nothing he said, ever, it seemed, for long stretches was good. It was always judgment all the time. It was very difficult to listen to. These people had difficult lives. Anyway, let's go back to this main question I always ask. What does this chapter, Ezekiel 4, 1 through 17, teach you about God? There shouldn't just be one answer. There's a lot of things we can learn here about the nature of God.
Sovereignty to predict the future is the most obvious.
Okay, so the ability to predict the future is something that only God can do, ultimately.
And he's patient. I mean, 390 years bearing the sin of the house of Israel.
Incredibly patient. If those 390 days represent 390 years, that's the northern kingdom of Israel, they went off the rails almost immediately. You remember the story that basically the Jewish nation had no king. They asked for a king. God gave them, in the time of Samuel, a king named Saul. He was not a good man. He was not a man after God's own heart, so he gave him instead David, a man after God's own heart, who was a good and righteous king, pattern of Christ who would come later. But then after him came his son Solomon, and Solomon sinned through pagan worship, and his heart was led astray by foreign wives. And so God decided to take 10 of the tribes away from him, but not in his lifetime. but instead from his son, Rehoboam. And he set up a rival king, Jeroboam, who got the 10 tribes of the northern kingdom. And as soon as Jeroboam came to power, he set up a false religious system because he didn't want his own subjects to go back to Jerusalem 3 times a year and worship God. So he set up golden calves in 2 places and set up his own priestly class of people, making up his own religion. And every generation, God said in all of those, he spoke of the sins that Jeroboam, son of Nebat, made Israel commit. It just went on relentlessly for centuries, 390 years. And so Zach is saying this shows patience from God. And actually it says in Romans 9, what if God, choosing to show his wrath and make his power known, bore with great patience the objects of wrath prepared for destruction? So how do we see in the 390 years great patience on the part of God?
I'd say like even the siege is an act of mercy
Mhm.
because they're not listening to him, they're turning their backs on them. He's
Right.
not, they've like followed other idols.
Right.
So the fact that he's saying like this is what you deserve in a lot of ways, but I'm giving you another chance to live.
Right.
So
the siege itself, though it's very vicious, I mean, it's going to be really bad, and we'll talk about details, but it's bad. I mean, we're talking cannibalism. We're talking about basically everyone inside the city dying. But it's still mercy from God, because God doesn't need Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians to kill people. I mean, you do know that, right? He doesn't need any help to kill people. If God says be dead, you're dead. So he could just strike them all dead immediately. He doesn't need to use fire from heaven either. You can just drop dead. But he could send fire, like in the time of Elijah, which came down on the sacrifice and not on the people, but the people deserved to burn. By the way, there was another time when the fire did come and burn a captain with 50 men who came to arrest Elijah. That was a dangerous job, arresting Elijah. So that was that. That was a mini Sodom and Gomorrah right there for those 50 men, or 51, I guess. But yeah, God doesn't need any help. The whole thing is mercy from God. I think we forget the wages of sin is death. You know, and we're just so used to sin. But God is merciful. What else do you learn about God from this chapter?
He remembers everything.
Okay, how do you see that? Him remembering everything.
Well, he's counted all of the sins
Mhm.
for 390 years.
Right. So he's kept track. He's aware of what they're doing. And it's going to, again, we're a little bit hindered tonight because we don't see chapter 5. But he's going to say, look, you folks, I guess I'm going to go over now what does it teach about Israel. Let's hold off what I was about to say from chapter 5. What does this passage teach you about the Jews, about Israel, people?
They've been very wicked for a long time.
Persistent rebellion, sinfulness.
Hurts.
Hardened hearts, stubborn. And like I said, in chapter 5, we'll see their sins are worse than the pagan nations that surround them. That's what God says. You're worse off than they are. You are worse people than they are. And that's a big deal for them to have been set up in a central location, to be put on a stage, basically, a city on a hill, and to end up more pagan than any of the pagan nations around them, operating at a lower standard than they did, so that they, Ezekiel will say later, are shocked at their lewdness and their behavior, is horrible. So what we're going to find is God is bringing judgment on Israel, on Judah, on Jerusalem, because of their sins, and their sins are far worse than you ever thought they were. We're going to find out how bad they are, but they are far worse than you thought they were, or that anyone thought they were. Okay? As you read this chapter, details of the siege of Jerusalem by Babylon, what do you imagine it would be like to live under a siege? So first of all, let's talk about what a siege is. All right, you got an army that invades the land. They sweep in and they take all the easy stuff if they're overpowering, and which the Babylonians were. And so all the unwalled villages topple quickly. People just run. They just leave everything. They leave their farms. They leave their houses because they have some warning. Or they don't and they die out there in the fields. There are smaller walled citadels, but those get toppled pretty quickly. And then you got this one last place, this refuge that everyone who survives has fled to. And so then Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians come up. It's always up. They're basically climbing a mountain to get up to the plateau at the top area that the city is built on. And then they lay siege to it. So what does that mean? The concept of laying siege. How is that a military strategy?
Cut off all the supplies.
You're basically waiting on that, right? You're stopping water and food from coming in. You're stopping
Why not just rush on in? Why not just come in and kill everybody?
because you're just letting them wither away, weaken, so that they're an easy target. You don't have to expend your own.
Right. Well, expend. Now, how would you be expending your own men?
You're not.
What surrounds the city? Walls. What's behind the walls?
Archers.
Warriors with archers and men with swords waiting. You're gonna lose a lot of men taking that. And you don't want to lose your own guys. They don't want to die. And so attacking a citadel, a fortress like that is extremely costly. I mean, you're going uphill and all that. So it's better to not do it. Instead, you surround them and don't let anyone in or out, and you wait them out. All right? And you wait for the supplies of food and water to dwindle. You wait for disease, plague to take over. And at some point, some emissaries from the city are going to come out and surrender to you. Or you're going to press your advantage. There's certain aspects of siege warfare that are described here. What do you learn about siege warfare here?
Battering rams.
Battering rams. And what else?
Ramps.
What's that? What are ramps? Siege ramps.
I assume that's how you get
Over the wall.
over the wall.
All right. So, wow, that's great. All you have to do is build a ramp. What's the problem is you're trying to build the ramp.
Getting fired upon from the opposite.
Fired from the men inside the walls. Fired with what? Bows and arrows. Or they're going to pour hot oil on you.
Flaming torches.
So this whole thing takes time, right? Bashing the gates are the weak spot. But again, you're under fire the whole time. So this is going to go on a while, all right? But meanwhile, what's life like inside the walls?
Worse and worse.
Yeah. I mean, the king is going to ration everybody immediately, probably. So almost from the get-go, you're eating reduced food, all right? And as you're doing that, I mean, you need to cook it, right? So what are you going to use for fuel? Well, we'll get to that. It's not your first thought. I mean, come on, the first thing is going to be your stockpile of wood, cords of wood that you set up, right? Plenty of them, right? Yeah, but this thing's going on for a while. So after a while, what happens to that wood?
Starts to dwindle and there'll be none.
Until there is none. Then what do? You still need to cook, you still need to heat, do all this stuff. So you start taking furniture, burning the furniture, the tables, the chairs. After a while, you start pulling beams from houses. After that, then you're at cow manure, all right? But you can't do that forever either, because what's going to happen to the cows?
They're going to get eaten.
They're going to get eaten, and they're not making manure anymore. So now what do you have left? Well, you can read about it. So life inside the citadel, what is it like? Increasingly horrible. People are dying of starvation. And when they're dying, once the food supplies are gone, they're going to turn on each other. Now, maybe they're not going to kill people and eat them, but they're going to eat dead people. And it's gross. It's just disgusting. And the Lord openly talks about it here. Fathers will eat their sons, sons will eat their fathers. And it was predicted in Deuteronomy, as we'll see in a moment. So this is it's terrible. It's terrible. So these are all still main questions. What are timeless lessons? Because siege warfare is basically over at this point. Gunpowder ended it. Why did I say that? Why did gunpowder end siege warfare?
People couldn't get close enough to cut off supply lines.
Right. Well, if you're the stronger army and you have gunpowder, you have cannons, all right, what's going to happen to the city walls?
It'll come down.
How long will it take for them to come down? Later that same day. So that ends siege warfare. That ends walled fortresses and citadels. All right. Now, I will say that World War II, there were lots of reinforced concrete bunkers and all that, and they're still there. The Germans are good engineers. As a matter of fact, in Berlin, there are reinforced concrete things that were so difficult for the British demolition teams and others to destroy that they decided to decorate them instead. So they're still there. It's just too costly. So lots of reinforced concrete. So it'll, withstand some attacks. But for the most part, it's over, But back then, that's what that was like. All right, so we're not likely to be under siege. Still, all scripture is God-breathed and useful. What can we in the 21st century as Christians learn from this chapter?
There's something about the metaphor of a siege that feels the destruction is inevitable. It's just gonna come, and so and the way that it's paired with this sin, that the judgment's just gonna come. It's not, you're not gonna escape it. So I think it's certainly, as you said before, like we're just so used to sin that it's a good palate cleanser sort of the mind, or a good refresher, just that sin is serious and it has consequences and they're inevitable.
Sure. And you're hinting at it, if not openly saying it. There is a far worse judgment coming on earth. And I want to focus on Ezekiel 4 tonight, but as I'm doing memorization in Jeremiah 21 is interesting because Jeremiah is inside the walls of the siege. So like I said, you say, well, this would be more effective if it were done. Well, Jeremiah was doing his own stuff inside the walls. So he is God's man there. And at this point, by this point, the Babylonians are literally outside the walls of Jerusalem. It's not prophecy anymore. It's happening. All right. So our chapter here is before that. Does that make sense? You got to layer it. So by this point, the Babylonians have overwhelmed most of Judah. Now they're right at the walls of Jerusalem. The only prophet, it seemed, well, I think there's more than one prophet, but the main prophet that said all this was going to happen was Jeremiah. All the other prophets that said it will never happen have been completely discredited. All right, the ones that were saying peace, peace, and there was no peace, the false prophets. So Jeremiah is the real deal. He was a real prophet. And the wicked, stupid king Zedekiah, who was not listening to anything, sent some messengers to Jeremiah in Jeremiah 21 saying, would you please inquire of the Lord for us and find out if the Lord is willing to do one of those like mighty deeds like he's done in the past and deliver us from the Babylonians. Well, he's referring specifically to King Hezekiah and the Assyrians during the Assyrian invasion, in which God sent a single angel, the angel of the Lord, and in one night he killed 185,000 Assyrian troops. Now that's a pretty powerful secret weapon right there. At which point the king of Assyria broke off and went home to Assyria, where his sons assassinated him. All right, well, that was amazing what God did for Judah and Jerusalem in the days of Hezekiah. That was back in the days of Isaiah, about a century before this. So now we're at Jeremiah's time, and Zedekiah sends messengers saying, would God be willing to do another one of those things again, like he did then? And Jeremiah says, no way, basically. You need to understand that the weapons that you have in your hands, the king of Babylon will use against you to kill you. All right? So I want you to know I am fighting against you myself. God is saying that. This is not an accident. This is not some accident of history. God is sending the Babylonians. He's sending Nebuchadnezzar. They're doing his work. This is the enemy here is God. He's the one, and Nebuchadnezzar is just his servant, his puppet. And so therefore, I want to tell you and he says, God is fighting against you with a mighty hand and outstretched arm, that is something they would recognize for what was said during the Exodus. Only now that mighty power is turned against the Jews. And it's all because God is angry at them because of their sins. So therefore, Jeremiah says, the only way you're going to survive is if you go outside the gates and surrender to the king of Babylon. So God is setting before you the path of life and the path of death. If you stay inside the city, you will die by the sword, famine, and plague. But if you go out and surrender to the king of Babylon, you will escape with your life. Now let me just pause for a moment and say, let's imagine that you are in the city of Jerusalem under siege, and you hear this prophet telling all the warriors on the walls and all the population besides, the only way any of you will survive is if you go out and surrender right now to the Babylonians. How would you feel if you were your average patriotic Jew at that point? You want to kill him. He's weakening the will and the moral fiber, you think, of the soldiers here. And so he looks really bad. The problem is he's telling the truth. The only way they were going to survive is to go out and surrender. And why will the weapons be used against them? It's not that the Babylonians need the Jews' weapons. It's not that at all. If you are besieging a city for 18 months to 30 months, you're not with your family back home, you've been in the same place, you're almost as stuck there as the Jews are. Now you have plenty to eat and drink, but they just won't surrender. But finally there's a breach in the wall and you go in. What is your attitude going to be toward any man you find with a weapon in his hand? What are you going to want to do? Kill them immediately. You'll be enraged at those people. There's not any mercy. So fundamentally, that's what it means. If you're holding weapons in your hand against the king of Babylon and you're still fighting right to the end, you're just going to die. And before that, a lot of the people are just going to die of famine and of plague. So Jeremiah was telling the truth. Now, I remember when I was, it was about a week and a half ago when I came across this, and I was thinking about 2 weeks ago. I was thinking about, and I'm asking the question, what timeless lesson do we have here? So I was thinking about the second coming of Christ. The armies from heaven are going to come to earth, to rebellious, wicked planet Earth. So picture Earth then like a walled fortress that's been holding out against King Jesus, right? And suppose at the time of that invasion, you're found holding weapons in your hand against King Jesus. What's going to happen to you? Well, you're going to die, and I don't just mean physically. You're going to die eternally. So the only refuge is to go out and surrender to the coming king. And so Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you," means submit to my kingly rule now, while there's time. Because on that day, I'm not accepting any repentance and faith. Because the day of faith will be over. You'll be seeing Jesus up in the clouds in the sky with power and great glory, and the time will have passed. So that's the picture that we get here. Now, Ezekiel is just doing this all by a diorama and by some acted drama. Jeremiah, it's happening in Jeremiah 21. It's already occurring. Does that make sense? So God's working all sides of that. All right, I listened to Don Carson's sermon about this today. This is what he said. Many in Jerusalem back home and among the exiles on the banks of the Kibar River with Ezekiel simply could not believe that God would ever let Jerusalem fall. By the way, Jeremiah 7, this is plain. Stop saying the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord. What does that mean? It's like it was like a slogan. God's not going to let this place be destroyed. And that's when he said, "Go to Shiloh and look at what I did there." That's a whole different story for another day. But he's like, "Oh, he'll let it be destroyed." Anyway, go back to this. How could he? This was the city of the great king. This was the city of Davidic promise. This was the city that God had chosen for the erection of the temple built in Solomon's time. This was where the glory manifests itself on the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. This is where the blood of the covenant was spilled. The destruction of Jerusalem itself was simply theologically, culturally unimaginable. And that's what Ezekiel was pronouncing. It's almost like saying that God is dead, or imagine us Christians finding the corpse of Jesus. It's just not possible. That's the way they saw it. And here's this prophet predicting that that's exactly what's going to happen. All right, you can skip the timeline. That just shows how long, the siege went on and all that. You got a chronology here. The prophecy in Deuteronomy. This is amazing. Moses, before the Jews ever entered the promised land, predicted in advance the whole story from the time that they entered the promised land until the exile. They haven't even entered yet. They haven't conquered Jericho yet. And he taught them a song telling them what was going to happen ahead of time. And in that song of Moses, it says this, Deuteronomy 28, the Lord will bring a nation against you from far away, from the ends of the earth, like an eagle swooping down, a nation whose language you will not understand. This is Deuteronomy. This is before any Jewish history in the promised land had started. A fierce-looking nation without respect for the old or pity for the young. They will devour the young of your livestock and the crops of your land until you are destroyed. They will leave you no grain, no new wine or oil, nor any calves of your herds or lambs of your flocks until you are ruined. They will lay siege to all the cities throughout your land until the high fortified walls in which you trust will fall down. They will besiege all the cities throughout the land the Lord your God is giving you. Because of the suffering that your enemy will inflict on you during the siege, you will eat the fruit of the womb, the flesh of the sons and daughters the Lord your God has given you. Even the most gentle and sensitive man among you will have no compassion on his own brother or the wife he loves or his surviving children. And he will not give to one of them any of the flesh of his children that he is eating. That's disgusting. That was what Moses said, and then there's the woman part next, which I cut so I could just keep it to 4 pages. But it says, so also a woman who's so tender and delicate she won't even put her foot down on the ground is going to be eating her own children. So all of this was predicted. All right. Why do you think God wanted Ezekiel to symbolize the siege of Jerusalem before it began, and how does he symbolize it? We kind of covered that, but what does he do to symbolize the siege?
It's limited food and lives in this
What's the first thing he does?
clay
tablet, big one. I look on it as pretty big, like from me to Jim. Big
drawing
thing.
on it,
Draws on it.
the layout of it.
Maybe like the blueprint, something like that. Or maybe the profile of the city, like you could recognize the temple and the palace and all that, something like that. Like if you saw the Eiffel Tower or something, you'd know it was Paris. Maybe like the silhouette, something. But they knew it was Jerusalem, there's no doubt. Okay, and then he gets these little, I don't know, soldier men, like, I don't know, boys growing up. Maybe you played plastic soldiers or something like that. And then he's got little siege ramps going up to the thing. He's got all this thing going on. All right. Now, what is the significance of the iron pan? All right. Somebody read verse 3.
You take an iron griddle and place it as an iron wall between you and the city, and set your face toward it, and let it be in a state of siege, and press the siege against it. This is a sign for the house of Israel.
What is it a sign of? So picture it. By this point, the siege, all the diorama replica stuff is all done. And all that's done, the siege is going on, and then get picture it being black, like a black iron big pan, and set it up between your face and the city. What does that symbolize?
Is that God, like, not wanting to answer their prayers?
Yes. Well, there we go. That was easy. All right. At this point, Ezekiel, this is prophecy. Ezekiel represents God in verse 3. When he's lying on his side, he represents Israel. Does that make sense? So he's representing here God, and then the iron griddle. All right, if you're thinking about it, what can you see of the city? Nothing. It's like you can't see it. Your vision is blocked. That's what it will seem like to the Jews. They're like, where is God? I thought God was going to deliver us. Where is he? And he's saying, I can't see you. I'm not looking at you. So it comes down to what we would call the face of God. So I got all these quotes here. First of all, to kind of prove what I'm saying, I think is a good interpretation. Look in the middle of the series of verses I gave you. Someone read Ezekiel 5:11.
Therefore, surely as I live, declares the sovereign Lord, because you have defiled my sanctuary with all your vile images and detestable practices, I myself will withdraw my favor. I will not look on you with pity or spare you.
You see that? I will not look on you with pity or spare you.
That's the iron pan.
That's the iron pan. I'm not going to look at you. All right, so that's the next chapter. That's the continuation of this. So that's why I think this is what's going on with the iron pan. But now look at many other verses. Ezekiel 15:7. I will set my face against them. Although they have come out of the fire will yet consume them. Ezekiel 8:18. Therefore I will deal with them in anger. I will not look on them with pity or spare them. Although they shout in my ears, I will not listen to them. To Jeremiah, he says, and there's many such verses in Jeremiah 7:16. So do not pray for this people, nor offer any plea or petition for them. Do not plead with me, for I will not listen to you. It's amazing. He's saying, I'm not going to listen to any prayers. I'm not going to listen to their prayers. I'm done. I will not show them pity or mercy or compassion. So it will be like there's an iron wall between my face and them. Now, when you think about the face of God, I thought about this. This is very well known. Someone read Numbers 6:24 through 26.
The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace.
So, Zach, what is the significance of the word face in that very famous benediction?
I would assume it would mean like his presence or his blessing, his favor.
His favor. His face is turned toward you. You're seeing the face of the Lord. This is what Moses wanted to see, was to see the face of God. So the face turned toward you represents his blessing. So then, if this is the blessing, this is the blessing that the law of Moses taught the Jews to use, then when God turns his face away, that must be a curse. This is what I think Jesus experienced when he said, my God, why have you forsaken me? You know, the Father turns his face away, one of our hymns says. Remember that? So there's a sense that the face of God represents his grace, mercy, and kindness and love. And the face turned toward you is that. Then Psalm 27, it says, my heart says of you, seek his face. Your face, Lord, I will seek. Do not hide your face from me. Do you see that? Well, with the iron griddle, that's everyone is experiencing God hiding his face from them. So he's not going to answer prayer. He's not going to show them mercy. And that's what I think the iron griddle represents. I also thought of Isaiah 59:1-2. Someone read that for us, if you would.
Surely the arm of the Lord is not too short to save, nor his ear too dull to hear. But your iniquities have separated you from your God. Your sins have hidden his face from you, so that he will not hear.
So that answers it. Look, it's not that God doesn't know what's going on. God doesn't just know what's going on. God is doing it. And you're going to see this in chapter 5. This is specifically the judgment of God on the Jews. It's not an accident. And so God, the iron griddle, represents God saying no to them and saying he's going to bring a judgment on them. There's no pity or mercy or compassion. All right, so that's 1-3. What happens next in the drama in verses 4-8? Now we have all of the eating stuff. All right? Oh, no, I'm sorry, not yet. Then lie on your left side and put the sin of the house of Israel upon yourself. You are to bear their sin for the number of days you lie on their side. So in that sense, I don't think that there's any particular torture or suffering that's going on for Ezekiel, just the act of laying on the left side. So I think he's oriented in such a way that you could picture kind of the map, and the left side, he's facing north, the northern kingdom. So this definitely represents the northern kingdom of Israel. Now keep in mind, they've been exiled for over a century at this point. All right, the Assyrians took them out a long time ago. The southern kingdom Jews might have seen themselves as spiritually superior to the northern kingdom, but they weren't spiritually superior. They were in some ways worse. And this is going to come out in Ezekiel. So like they were in Hezekiah's day, and they had more godly kings, but they were worse in that they had lots of advantages, spiritual advantages, but they didn't redeem them. They didn't take advantage of them, and they were just as polytheistic and syncretistic as the northern kingdom was in the end. They were just as bad. I mean, Manasseh, Josiah's son, offered his sons in the Davidic line in the fire to Molech, burned his own sons in the Davidic lineage, sons of David. He burned them in the fire to Molech. And that's southern kingdom. So the prophets, both Jeremiah and Ezekiel, say, you guys are worse. But they were arrogant. So on his left side, he is representing Israel, and in that way has become Israel, sinful Israel, laying on the side. Now he's tied up with ropes. Why do you think that? What does that represent? Verse 8, I will tie you up with ropes so that you cannot turn from one side to the other until you finish the days of your siege. So he's got 390 on one side, 40 days on the other, and he's bound with ropes.
Probably is the only way to be able to do that.
So maybe it's helping him act out the drama. And I thought that when I memorized this, I thought, yeah, I mean, I would not be able to do it. I mean, you think about it, even if you had to do it for the day, like that was your day job, 12 hours on one side of your body not moving, that's hard. So they asked the prophets to do hard things. God did. And so maybe the ropes tied him. Some of the commentators say it could represent also the exile. And so the ropes represents a bondage and exile and all that. It's a little confusing to me. It's not easy. These symbols are not easy. But I really look on the 390 representing the number of years that the northern kingdom of Israel was overtly wicked and sinful in God's sight, 40 years being the same for the southern kingdom of Judah. Okay? So that's what the way that I see it. And, then he says in verse 7, turn your face toward the siege of Jerusalem and with bared arm prophesy against her. What does that mean to you? Verse 7, with bared arm prophesy against her.
Is it might or judgment or force?
I think so. So in this case, he's representing God again. So you got to stay with me now, all right? We're tracking. Sometimes he's Israel, sometimes he's representing God. This is the life of a prophet. It's like, what is he doing now? I don't know. But he's got the arm bared, and I think that represents the power of God. And again, I think Jeremiah 21, the chapter I just quoted, kind of represents that. Someone read that for us, Jeremiah 21, 4 and 5.
This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I am about to turn against you the weapons of war that are in your hands, which you are using to fight the king of Babylon and the Babylonians, who are outside the wall besieging you, and I will gather them inside the city. I myself will fight against you with an outstretched hand and a mighty arm, anger and fury and great wrath.
You don't have to wonder what that means. God is saying, I am doing this. This is not the Babylonians ultimately. This is me. And I thought about it this way, if God is for us, who could be against us? But if God is against us, who could be for us? It's terrifying to have Almighty God fighting against you with a bared arm, and that's what this is. So it's meant to be scary.
Do you think it's while he's laying on his side, using that arm, that he's prophesying actually while he's laying down? I mean, that's what it sounds like.
I don't know.
The bared arm.
Look, from the beginning of this book of Ezekiel, my brain was scrambled day after day after day, saying, I'm trying to picture this. Is he doing this all the time? Does he do this, then stand up and say things and lays down again? Does he then go off and cook and then gets tied back up again? It's hard to figure all this stuff out.
Say if he has to go, I ain't trying to say he has to go to the bathroom. I mean, was he, don't be, quite
Yeah.
Oh, that I thought of that too.
There are definite practical sides to this. All right, the final part of chapter 4, this last section, starts with the issue of food. Now, we've already covered that. 20 shekels is about 8 ounces of food. The food listed is of such a strange variety that you basically are going to eat whatever you can get and in small amounts. So this is what famine looks like. And I've already described what that journey would have been like. Would have gotten worse and worse. Some people can handle it better than others. Some will die, drop dead earlier than others. And others are going to be able to survive through, but everybody's getting thinner and thinner by the day. It's a very, very sad and terrifying thing. How does God describe? Oh, by the way, we talked about the cooking of the food. And the reason you have to think through why the cooking over human excrement. And I think I covered it. It's because the wood is all gone. That was gone a long time ago. You use the stacks of cordwood, that's all gone. Then you did the furniture, that's all gone. Then you pull beams from the house and anything else. The houses are nothing but rubble. Probably some of them were anyway. That's all gone. There's nothing left. And so they actually were literally probably doing this, cooking with human excrement, which is disgusting and disease-ridden. Again, the 3 killers were the sword, famine, and what? Plague. So that's disease is spreading. So it's a bad situation. And he tells Ezekiel to symbolize this by actually doing it, right? So I want you to cook your food over human excrement. So what happened next?
I can just only imagine.
Well, in the text, what happened?
Ezekiel protested.
Ezekiel said, I'm not doing it.
Finally had his limits.
He's like, all right, I'll do all this other stuff, but not that. By the way, you must notice how similar this is to what Peter said in Acts 10 with the vision of the sheet let down from heaven with the reptiles in it and all that. And he was told by God, get up, Peter, kill and eat. Remember this whole thing? What did Peter say to him? Never, Lord, I have never eaten anything impure or unclean. Does that sound familiar? That's almost exactly what Ezekiel says. But in Peter's case, God didn't back down. He said, don't call anything impure that God has made clean. So he's talking about Gentiles at that point and the fact that God has cleansed them by faith in Christ. But here what happens as Ezekiel dickers with God?
He changed it to count them.
That was nice of God, wouldn't you say? He's like, just do what I tell you. But he didn't. Just out of kindness, he's like, fine, you can use cow manure. Which I find that whole thing rather interesting. But then he ends in verse 16 and 17. He then said to me, Son of man, I will cut off the supply of food in Jerusalem. The people will eat ration food in anxiety and drink ration water in despair. For food and water will be scarce. They will be appalled at the sight of each other and will waste away because of their sins. So how do those verses describe the mental state of the people during the siege?
The earth was shot. They were, pretty much everything's taken away. The anxiety, that, oh my God, what, this survival mode. And
What are they most afraid of? What are they most anxious of? The people inside the city. What are they all afraid of?
Well, the invaders.
They're afraid of the Babylonians. And what's happening to the soldiers that are defending them? Well, what does the verse say? They'll be appalled at the sight of each other. So their warriors are getting thinner. They're losing muscle mass. They're getting weaker. Some of them aren't able to climb up to their positions on the wall anymore. And so every day you wonder, is this it? Are they coming in now? They're coming in. They're going to slaughter us all. We're going to die today. And you can imagine some people are talking like this. This is it. We're done. Would you just be quiet? Stop it. And this goes on and on. It's a terribly anxious, pressure-ridden situation in which the people are psychologically being destroyed. And the Lord spoke about this in, I think, in Deuteronomy as well. He says, there the Lord will give you an anxious mind, eyes weary with longing, and a despairing heart. You will live in constant suspense, filled with dread both night and day, never sure of your life. In the morning you will say, if only it were evening, and in the evening, if only it were morning, because of the terror that will fill your hearts and the sights that your eyes will see. You're going to see things you wish you didn't see. One last thing. He says here, maybe in chapter 5. No, it's in 13, verse 13. Look at verse 13. The Lord said, in this way the people of Israel will eat defiled food where?
Among the nations.
Among the nations where I will drive them. So those are the exiles. So those are the people that survive. When they get scattered, what food are they going to eat out in the various countries where God scatters them?
Defiled food.
It won't be kosher. I can tell you right now. They're not going to be able to keep their Jewish dietary rules. They're going to eat whatever is served them or they'll die. So anyway, this is the judgment of Ezekiel 4. We'll talk more about it next week, God willing, Ezekiel 5. Let me close in prayer. Father, thank you for the time we've had to study tonight. It's difficult to read this. But we know that nothing we've described tonight, however horrific, comes close to the terrors and the horrors of hell. And we tend to be much more concerned about physical than the eternal judgment of God. And we thank you, Lord, that you have in Christ rescued us from that. I pray that you would enable us to walk in ways that please you. You are the same holy God now as you were then. Help us to realize these lessons and learn from them. In Jesus' name, amen.
Stay motivated to grow to spiritual maturity by accessing free biblical content at twojourneys.org. Help others in their spiritual growth by sharing these resources, praying for Two Journeys, and supporting the mission financially by visiting twojourneys.org/donate.